All right, in case you don't know, my name is Heath. No, I'm not on. They're just videoing it. Hi, Mom. Okay. In case you don't know, my name is Heath, and this is Unlocking the Bible. So if you are in the wrong spot, I will not be offended if you get up and leave. But it'll be your loss because we're gonna have a good time tonight. Okay, so tonight, this seminar is definitely meant to be interactive. So I'm going to spend some time, especially at the front end, sort of talking through some things with you. But then I got to get out of the way. And if you're here because you want to learn to study the Bible, it would make sense that I would get out of the way and let you try this out, okay? So we're going to talk a little bit about a technique that is one of my favorites to study the Bible that many of you probably have never done. And that's cool, and that's fine, so let's try it out. Okay? But first, let's talk a little bit about why. Okay? Why we would do any of this. So here's a question I have for you. What's a little work worth? All right. So here we go. Quaid. On this platform, I have 10 wonderfully fun Twix bars. There are, let's see, a pretty equal number of right and left so that we're very balanced. Super important. So, Quaid, if I offer you this one Twix bar, it is really, really easy. Would you take it? If I just said, you know what, I got something very, very easy for you to do, super simple, like all you got to do is just read a little bit. Would you take it? Because you don't like Twix bars? Okay. Well, let's take a U-turn. Well, this is a left. Would you prefer a right? Okay, let's say it was a comic book that had mostly pictures. Would you want it then? Let's say it was a movie and you could just press play. Okay, well, my whole thing is sideways anyway, so I'm not even going to talk to you about it. Here's what I anticipate everybody else would say other than Quaid. If it was easy, you'd be like, of course I do. Of course I would. Right? But what if I said, all right, so what if I made it just a teensy bit harder? Like not a lot, just a teensy bit. And I'll give you 2. And you'd all be like, all right, yeah, probably. All right, what if we made it just a teensy little bit harder? What if I gave you 3? And you'd be like, yeah, I'd probably do that. But what if I said, let's say it was a 5-minute project. What if I said, if you did it in 10 minutes, I'd give you all of these. I'd give you 7 out of the 10 if it just took maybe 5 more minutes. Most of you, because you're greedy sugarholics, would be like, yeah, of course I would do that. And if you would say yes to that, then tonight is going to be perfect for you. Let me tell you why. So this is something that's called the cone of learning. Boy, they couldn't come up with any more boring name than that. This is what it means. It's very simple. What it means is research has shown, for the most part, that you're going to remember 10% of what you read. Think about that. Think of all the reading that you do. You're going to remember about 10% of it if you just straight read it. You're going to remember about 20% of what you hear. So that means you're going to forget 80% of what I say tonight, which is I don't even know why I prepped then. It's the most defeating thing for all speakers. 30% you're going to remember of what you see and of what you hear. Okay? So get to the next line. 50% of what we hear and of what we see. So movies tend to stick with us pretty good, right? We remember typically about 50% of a movie, and of the 50% that we forget, the 50% we remember triggers us into remembering the other parts of it. That's why movies and TV shows are like, we learn a lot from those things actually. Okay? 70%. we remember 70% of what we say by participating, by talking. So when Jordan or Mike or whoever is in the middle of a teaching, they're like, all right, talk about this with your neighbor. That's why they're doing it. They're not doing it because they forgot to prep. And they're like, oh, shoot, I got to come up with 10 extra minutes. Nope. It's about trying to engage us. It's why your teachers do this all the time in class. It's not just them blah, 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 because you're forgetting 80% of what they say. So they stop, they say, okay, let's talk about this for a second. You talk about it. Okay, what did you learn? This is why, because the more we participate in learning, the more we remember. I think you're here tonight because you believe that you want this to be true about your life, but maybe it's not. You want this to have the big t-shirt that says, I love Bible study, but maybe you don't really live that out because, you know what, it's hard. It's hard. Why is it hard? Let me ask you that question. Why is studying the Bible hard? This is the part where you answer. What's that? Not sarcastically. Why is studying the Bible is very hard? Why is it? Can be boring. There's a lot of reasons it can be boring, but we'll just take it at face value. Yep. Logs. It's hard. Like what? What is hard to understand? Because there's so many things that are hard to understand. Okay? Jamie.
I was kind of going to say that. It's almost like coded.
Like, ooh, coded. Ooh. I'm excited too. Okay, I'm listening. I'm sorry, I'm listening. I'm listening. I'm listening.
It's not just like straight up telling you need to do this. They start telling like stories and parables.
Okay. Okay.
Like you actually need to decipher it.
Yeah, actually, okay. Great. Which can be difficult.
Yeah. There's a lot of words.
And not enough pictures? A lot of words, not enough pictures. I can understand that, right? Kids' Bibles really got an edge on it, right? The minute we stop the picture Bible thing, we're really in trouble. Okay, these are great. Anything else? Because there's 100 reasons. Yes. Yes. Depending on the version that you're reading, it can be very difficult. Like, because it's not how you and I talk, right? There's not enough and so then Jesus said to John, yo, dog, who do you think that I am? You know, it's not the language that we use, okay? And so actually, we're going to talk about that real quick. So that's great. Jamie, anybody other than Jamie? Okay, Jamie.
Well, you see here, what I think the main reason is a lot of people think they don't have time.
Okay, yep. But we have time for what he said is most people say they don't have time. We have time for what's important to us. But when we feel like something is really a lot of work, it's like I get home from work after a long day and, oh, gosh, so I have to, really engage and think hard. And, and it's not what you want to do. You want to sit in front of the TV after a long day at school and practice and youth group and unloading the dishwasher because your mom is ranting at you and your dad is wondering why you haven't cleaned your room since Sunday. And then you're like, and I'm supposed to read the Bible. But all of these reasons make it hard. So, here's a couple of reasons. Here's a couple of reasons why reading the Bible is really hard, and all the things you said are legit. Okay? The Bible was written over 1,500 years by 40 authors, 66 different books talking about, in some ways, the exact same thing, and also very different things along the way. The most recent part was written 2,000 years ago. That's the new release 2,000 years ago, okay? It was in a very different culture, written a long time ago. So not only do we have to understand another part of the world, we have to understand another part of the world 2,000, 3,000 years ago. Is in 3 languages. So we have the translation issues. There are parts of the Bible where when they translate it, we just aren't even totally for sure, is this the best word in the English language to translate that? Okay? Because our world is just a very different place. It was written halfway across the world. How much do you really know about Israel, current day Israel? So you know even less about ancient Israel, right? I mean, it just, of course. Okay, we go to Florida and we're in culture shock. We're talking about a whole other country. What about this? There's all sorts of styles. The Bible's full of all different kinds of reading, history and poetry and prophecy and wisdom and parables. And in that regard, Jamie's dead on. Like, you got to decode it. Because every time you read it, you're like, okay, what am I reading? Who wrote it? Who did they write it to? What kind of, is this a poem? Is this a song? Is this a book of history? Like, what is going on? And so in that regard, yeah, all of those things add up to, it's hard work. It can be hard work, I should say. It can be hard work. Okay? Tonight, we want to talk about ways that we can make this easier to understand. I promise you that you'll be able to get something out of it every time you do Bible study if you do it like this. It's like, not a lot of promises in the world, but this is a promise, all right? So, here's what I want you to think about tonight as we move forward. I want you to think about studying the Bible not as a chore, not as work, but rather like a treasure hunt. I love Indiana Jones. When I was your guys' age, Indiana Jones was like the man. It's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an archaeologist, okay? I wanted to go be this biblical archaeologist. I wanted to go find the, Raiders of the Lost Ark. I wanted to be that guy. I wanted to wear that hat. I wanted a bullwhip. I wanted the whole shebang. And then instead I was a pastor for a long time, which is actually shockingly similar, minus the bullwhip, okay? But many of you could actually benefit from a bullwhip. Okay, I want you guys to think about studying the Bible like it's a great adventure, not like it's a big pile of work. One of my favorite quotes. We must read our Bibles like men digging for buried treasure. What if we took the attitude that inside of these pages is treasure? Okay? If in your backyard we knew that chest was buried, I don't care if the ground is frozen. You got a shovel in your hand and you are digging hard. It's true. You're not going to wait for spring. You're going right now. This is so much more valuable than that chest full of gold. So next time you grab this, like, all right, I want to read this like I'm digging for gold because that's what's in here. And this thing that we're going to talk about tonight helps us find the gold. All right? It's all playing together, my friends. So here's what we're going to do. It's called inductive manuscripting. Now, we don't put that on like, hey, Heath's going to talk about inductive manuscripting because nobody would sign up because that sounds really lame. Okay? So that's what we call this. If you want to research this, this is what you type into Google. But what I say is this is how we color in our Bibles. All right? That's what inductive manuscripting is to me. And I sat in your seats a few years ago, and I learned about this for the very first time. I was about 19 years old when I first saw this in action, and I'm like, holy cow, I've never read the Bible like that. And I don't do this all the time, but I've got lots and lots of binders where I have done this. Sweet times, okay? So here's why I like it. Inductive manuscripting does this, because we read the Bible, and Ben was right on. Thank you for having the guts to say it. Oh, it's kind of boring. When we don't engage, you're 150% right. It is boring. It can be boring. Because many of us are visual learners. We're not just sit and read and learn, okay? That's why some of you guys struggle in school, because it's just not how you're wired up. This kind of Bible study, that's not that. It's totally like engaging. We're constantly engaged in the text. And last, it combines studying, which I know, be careful, because that's a scary thing, but studying and journaling and coloring and artistry and all these different kinds of crazy things, okay? At the end of this, your page that you're going to have in front of you tonight will look completely different than everybody else's. Yours will be 110% unique work of art, and it will help you to dig through and find some gold in the Bible. All right? So, here's what we're talking about. Here's what it looks like. Inductive manuscripting. Try not to say that too often. Okay, so this is from a few years ago. This is when I was a youth pastor. here, we took a night, and I said, all right, I gave 4 different texts from the Bible to 4 different students who we'd taught about this, okay? We used to do this as a summer activity sometimes. It was pretty cool. So this was his page, all right? So this gives you an idea of sort of like where are we going tonight. So this is Evan Hatton, for those of you guys who don't know. Awesome kid, unbelievably fast runner. All right, so here he was in Matthew chapter 7, and he just has this text that's all printed out, and it's a passage that he'd read a bunch of times. But here's the deal. There's no rules when you're doing this coloring through the Bible thing. No rules. And so he's going through, and he's looking for things that are interesting, and he's underlining with his color pencils, and he's marking up the page, and it should look like a box of color pencils puked all over the place, right? And he's making notes, and he's putting arrows, like, how does this tie to that? Does this tie to this? And then he's writing his questions down, right? And then that night, he actually took this, and then he taught the whole group. He's like, okay, here's what I got out of this text, and here's how I got it. Pretty cool. Give you another example. I'll go one more here. So this is a little bit more developed, right? So here is, like, if you're a little bit more nerdy about this thing, this is like from mine. So this is what it looks like. So all these different colors, all these different notes, these notes corresponds to these colors. And there's some people go all crazy, man. They've got like a whole, I mean, it looks like a map. They've got a whole key, and like this is, when I do this, it means God, and this, it means Jesus. And they're all in, man. I can't keep all that stuff straight. I just want to do this. So here's just a way that it can look. Here's another way that it can look. Sometimes you're looking for different things like who, what, when, where, why questions. Part of the reason that we don't get the Bible is because we don't ask some of the right questions. So this is a way to help do that. Oh, look, I bet you that's a theme in this whole thing. Whatever. So maybe you're asking yourself, okay, great. So there's lots of colors and some notes and some arrows, and it looks impressive, but what am I even looking for? Good question. So here we go. What are the kinds of things that we're looking for? The kinds of things that I would be looking for if I were in your shoes would be things like, okay, I'm looking for names. I'm looking for, I know this gets like English nerdy, so just put on your English class thing for just a second. Nouns and pronouns and verbs and references to God, right? So what about when you see capitals, like capital G versus little g? Capital H versus little h, he or he the God, right? Like, here are some things that I would be, like, who are we even talking about here? And we're going to actually look at a perfect example of that tonight. It's going to be very cool. A passage that is super confusing will become super simple, all with color pencils. Memory verses. You read a verse and you're like, oh, that's awesome. That's like a life verse for me. Love it. Circle it. Highlight it, whatever you want to do. I'm looking for lists. How about like fruit of the Spirit? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, self-control. Great. If there's a list of things, I'm going to highlight those. That's something that I bet you is important. If it was important enough for God to put a list of stuff, let's just highlight it. And all of a sudden, boom, pops off the page. Words, 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 boom. I'm going to think about that. See what I'm saying? Colors help the Bible come alive. Part of the reasons that we get bored is because it's just black and white, black and white, black and white. Now let's add some color. Themes. Drawing arrows, connecting things. I'm looking for that. I'm looking for time references. I'm looking for geographic locations. We're in Jerusalem. Oh, now we're in Antioch. Oh, now we're in Laodicea. Oh, no. Where are we? I don't even know where any of those places are. But does it matter in what I'm trying to read? Yeah, probably. There's not a lot of things in there that don't matter. So that would be something that I would be looking at. And then here's the beautiful thing. You guys all have these Bibles that like have the tops tell us what it is. Like everybody else in history just had Jeremiah chapter 48, and we have a message about Moab. Like it's telling you right there what it's probably about, right? So then all of a sudden we're like, oh, okay, I'm going to think about it like, okay, so this is something about Moab. Well, helps me understand some of that. It's beautiful. We live in a great time. So these are some of the things that I would be looking at. Okay? So Let's try it. Okay? Enough chitty-chatty. Let's try it. So here we go. We're going to set the table. We're going to do a couple different exercises tonight, but we're going to be looking for different things. So I'm going to set up for you what it is that we're going to be looking for. So the first one we're going to do is James. Okay, so grab one, pass it down to the end, please. There we go. Okay, but don't start yet, because I'm going to set this up for you so that we know exactly what we want to look at. What's that? Get what you pay for. These are the cheap ones. Oh, that's impressive. Okay, so here's what we're going to look for. In the passages that we look at tonight, we're going to look for just key things, because sometimes, if we're honest, it's just a little bit overwhelming. Like, I just gave you a whole entire list of, like, well, these are the things that I'd look for, and you're like, listen, Bible nerd, that's a big list of things. I'm not totally sure how to do this. So we're going to do this very simply, okay? So we're going to set this up tonight. You guys ever seen the movie National Treasure? National Treasure, one of my favorite movies. Why? Because it's about a treasure hunt. All things treasure hunt, I'm in, okay? So if you haven't seen the movie, I'm not going to give it away, but like, we're going to see a couple clips tonight because I think it shows us different things that we can be thinking about and looking for. And if this is really treasure, then let's get into the treasure hunting mode, right? So in the movie at this point, here's what's happening. There is an encoded message that has been hidden in plain sight for a couple hundred years. Supposedly, this is on the back of the Declaration of Independence, and it's been hidden in plain sight. There's a secret code on the back that's giving directions to the national treasure, but you got to do something special to get at it, right? Because otherwise, everybody would have seen it. So the people who put the secret message on the Declaration of Independence knew that the Declaration would never be destroyed because it's a national sort of a deal. But they didn't want anyone to find this treasure, right? They didn't want the wrong people to find this treasure because it had the potential to change the course of history. So our friends are trying to keep it out of the bad hands of the bad men who would do bad things with the treasure, okay? So this is how they figure out the secret message.
I told you, you need heat. See?
We need more juice.
I need more heat.
So in here, the way it worked was you had to have a reactive agent, okay? That was the juice. They had to put lemon juice on there. It was like an acid. And then they needed to apply heat to it to make it come out. And then all of a sudden they get these secret numbers, and those secret numbers, of course, lead to something, blah, blah, and we'll find out what the secret something is next. But for this one, what was the key? They needed a reactive agent, a color pencil, and they needed heat. So we are going to look for heat in James chapter 1. And heat in our context right now is going to be, we are looking for verbs. A verb is an action word, meaning action, we produce heat. So you can never go wrong when you study the Bible if you look for the verbs, because the verbs are probably going to tell you what to do, right? If it's an instructive passage like James chapter 1, this is an awesome few verses talking about this is how you should live. Here's how you should live. And so there's going to be lots of verbs in here telling you if you want to live a Christian life, here's a great place to start. So go ahead, get your color pencils, your reactive agents, and find the heat inside of the passage, okay? So here we go. If you need to blow on it to recreate it, that's fine. I don't know that it's going to necessarily work until you get your color pencils on, okay? So you have 5 minutes. I want you to go ahead, and I want you to specifically look for verbs, but other stuff that pops off the page, sweet. Go ahead and put some whatever on there, okay? Ready, go. Stupid Mac. Check, 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 check. Check, check. It's hard to think when you just have total quiet in a big room full of people. So here we go. So get your Toby Jam on. No, because it's the wrong plug now. No lightning adapter. Oh, I do. It's fine. Focus. You can do them all. I'll take the extras, unless you want them all. Okay. This helps you think. Yes, because I have another session I have to do. For later? I twisted your arm. I got it. You're welcome. Yeah. Okay, and if you already nailed all the verbs, then keep digging. What else you got? Look for some treasure. Right? What? That's right. Cooper's in. Where did my book go? Oh, there it is. Okay. just so we can keep going and having opportunities to look at some different things. Here's what I want you to do. At your table, whoever's at your table, if you're all lonely, just get somebody close. I want you to tell them 2 things that you learned from those verbs. Okay, that's all we were in theory doing. We're just looking at verbs. What are 2 things that you pulled out of that passage that seem like, okay, this was a worthwhile learning? Okay, you got 1 minute to share, so ready, go. Okay, just so we can keep moving. Great job. Good. I like hear little bits and pieces of discussion. Awesome. Okay? The power of the colored pencil. All right? So, here's the thing. Do you think you would have had that same little discussion if you just would have taken it from the black and white? Because it's the exact same. Like, this is the exact same text. Would you have had the same discussion? Let's try this. Could you have had the same discussion? Yes. But we only remember 10% of what we read, right? And so we're like, oh, okay, because this is how it works in small group, right? Okay, what do you guys think about that? Well, and then you just read me the verse, like tells me what you think about it. Like, no. But all of a sudden, you did just a teeny little bit more work, right? You went from 1 to all of a sudden a little bit more work, and now you got a whole handful of good stuff. So here's just a little bit of what mine looked like. So I took it, obviously I had a little bit more time. So if yours doesn't look like this, there's a reason. Okay, but so I take the verbs, but then it's also like, well, what is the verb telling me about, right? So I'm supposed to be quick to what? Listen. Listen. I'm supposed to be quick to listen. I'm supposed to be slow to speak, right? Speaking's that verb, but what am I, like, what's the modifier? I'm supposed to be slow. Am I supposed to be angry, not be angry? So, like, those sort of things. But at the end of it, right, you've got, this is why I like to do it like this. And you, all you have to do is go to any website, any, like, Bible Gateway or any of those, copy the text in whatever version you like, go to Word or Works or Pages, whatever your fancy is for your document processing, paste it in, and you put little margins on the edge, right, so that you can write these things. So then all of a sudden, I've got all these verbs. These are all these things I'm supposed to be doing. So I just make a quick little list. Do these. Quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to become angry, get rid of filth, get rid of evil, accept the word. If I could take that little list in 5 minutes, that is one awesome quiet time. And then what if I just, like, all day long, like, I pull out my, like, maybe I just take a little picture of that. You know what I mean? I look at it and I'm like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to be doing today, right? All because we took a little color pencil and applied it to a text. Sweet. So sweet. Okay, let's try a different way to do it, all right? So here we go. Take one, pass it down. All right, this is one of the awesomest passages in the Bible that people absolutely mess up. Why? Because it's confusing. It is confusing, or can be confusing. All right? So, if I just give it to you straight out of the book, John 1, and I say, what in the world's going on? If you've never been like sat through a teaching on it or heard Jordan preach on it or Mike preach on it, you'd be like, I don't know. But I promise you, you can figure this out. So here we go. Here's what we're going to look at. We're looking for treasure, right? So another part, every clue leads to the next clue, leads to the next clue to find the treasure, right? So now in the movie, what's happening is they found this other sweet clue. Okay, so all those numbers that we saw on the back of the Declaration of Independence now lead us to another series of clues that are written inside of a code. Okay, so all these numbers represent letters you have to put together, right? Like some sweet, cool thing you find in the back of a cereal box kind of a gig. This is how they figure it out. And it's going to totally apply to John chapter 1, one of the most awesome passages in Scripture.
Hang on. The key in silence, undetected. That wasn't about the map. That's about a cipher.
Cipher?
Yeah, it's a secret message you need a key to decode. You take numbers and correlate them with words from a book, like, say, from the Bible or the Quran. We use them in a gun running trade. So what's the key?
Gentlemen, why is this word capitalized?
Because it's important.
Because it's a name.
John chapter 1 is often misunderstood by people because they don't understand who it's actually talking about. It tells you about it, but we get so lost in it, we don't get it. So here's what I want you to do. John chapter 1. I want you this time, instead of looking for verbs, to look for names. And so by names, I mean anything that's capitalized and any pronouns. Okay, and a pronoun, for those of you who are struggling in English class, he, she, his, her, okay? Any of those. I want you to go ahead and I want you to highlight them. And then, after you get them highlighted, I want you to go back and be like, who is the he? Who is the him? Okay? And I bet you'll be able to figure it out. If you haven't got to verse 14 becomes the key. If we're on a treasure hunt, verse 14 is the key to deciphering all of the he's and hims and himselves. And so if you can figure out verse 14, it helps us understand everything else above that. And so if you figured it out, then go back now. And I want you to put above every pronoun, he, him, whatever, who would actually write the name above it, because it will change the passage. Okay? If there's capitalized things, write the name, because the capital should, just like in the video, is telling us it's someone, probably. So go ahead and write in who the someone is. All right. Okay, let's take a look. Okay, there's two people in here, right? And what we have to figure out is it Jesus or is it John? That all of these are relating to those two people, right? John is the one who is writing this. Jesus is the one he's talking about, but it kind of goes back and forth, back and forth. So here we go. If we read the passage, just out of here, it says the same thing. In the beginning was the Word was with God, the Word was God. That's super confusing. He was with God in the beginning. Through him all things were made. Without him nothing was made that has been made. In him was life. That life was light. Like, oh boy, who are we talking about here? So, let's go ahead and put the pronouns in. Let's put the names in for all of those. Substituted. All of a sudden, that passage that's sort of like, becomes like, oh, sweet. In the beginning was, what's the word? Jesus. In the beginning was Jesus. And Jesus was with God. And Jesus was God. Jesus was with God in the beginning. Through Jesus, all things were made. Without Jesus, nothing was made that has not been made. In Jesus was life, and that life was the light of all mankind. And the light shines into the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. There was a man sent from God whose name was John. He, who's he? No, not Jesus. John, right. But this is the exact thing. And Jamie, I know that you really know the answer, and you're just setting me up for a good teaching point, so I really appreciate that. Nailed it. That's exactly it. We just keep reading he, him, but when we do this simple little thing, it helps us to figure out all of that stuff, right? So all of a sudden we get down into verse 14, and this is the key to it, right? This is where it unlocks the whole thing. The Word, Jesus, became flesh and made his dwelling among us. We have seen Jesus, his glory, the glory of the one of the only Son. That's how we figure out who the Word actually is, right? So all of a sudden, boom, right there, capital S, unlocks everything else. Very, very hard to do if you're just reading it, trying to accomplish okay, my Bible reading plan today says I got to read John 1, so I'm going to do that. And man, that was boring, and I didn't get anything out of it. Here's the thing, guys. We don't have a chance to do this one, so I'm going to give you an extra one to go ahead and do. This is super simple. It takes a little bit of extra effort, but that little bit of extra effort is gold. It takes and it makes this gold. So I'm just going to show you, this is how I do it. This is not the way to do it. This is a way to do it. But I just have a binder. And in my binder, I just print out what I'm going to study. Like, you know what? I'm going to study, so I just printed out the book of Galatians. And I just printed out, took 5 or 6 pages. And so, okay, I'm just going to go through. And I just start, and I didn't do the whole book. I mean, this was like a week or 2 weeks worth of work. Galatians 1, Galatians 2. I love looking back at this stuff because I've got all these notes, and I write down questions like, I don't understand this. And I don't have to figure it out right now. But if I write it down, I can come back and look at it. Or I can bring it to my favorite youth pastor, PJ, and be like, what is this saying? Right? It's awesome. You guys, it's very, very simple. One of my favorite ways to study the Bible because for me, it takes it from black and white into color. Like high def 4K color. All right? So, as you leave tonight, if you are interested. So here is one of the, well, they're all good Psalms, but this is one of my favorites, Psalms chapter 1. Very short. Another chance for you to do this if you want to. It's a great thing you can do. And here is just a little handout about like, this is kind of how to do it. So if you are interested, here's a handout, but it's very similar to all the things we've been talking. It's just about somebody who's got a little bit different method of doing it. Thought it might be interesting for you. Okay? So, let me pray for us. Get you guys out of here to quarter concessions. All right, God, thank you very much for your word. It is gold. And God, we know that it can be hard, and you know what? You know that. You understand that that thing was written a long time ago in a culture that we sometimes as teenagers and even as adults, we don't always understand. It is hard, but God, it's worth it. It's worth it. I once heard that if it's not a challenge, then it won't change us. So, I pray that you would encourage us to get into the challenge of studying your word because it is worth it. And when we do that, it changes us. So, God, thank you for color pencils and pieces of paper that we can scribble all over and make your word come alive. We know that when we do, it will change us. So we love you. Thank you for these guys. Give them a great week. In Jesus' name, amen.